Okay. Rational approximations of irrational numbers. That might sound kind of hard. I'm going to ask my students and everyone watching to use a calculator, because the questions that the standardized tests are going to ask you, if you use a calculator, I'm going to argue that will not be very hard. Let's check this out. Select two values that are smaller than 1. Now, when you take any kind of big test, a calculator will be provided for something like this. So I'm going to grab a calculator, and you'll have a button for a calculator all the time, and this one might look a little bit different than the one you're going to use, but let's try this. Select two values that are smaller than 1. We know that fractions are division problems. By the 8th grade, we're supposed to know that fractions are division problems, and it's numerator divided by denominator. So just plug them in the order you see them. Numerator 2 divided by pi. We usually use 3.14. We know that it's an irrational number and goes on and on forever, a lot farther than 3.14, but that should be good enough to decide if this number is smaller than 1. I'll hit equals, and it is much smaller than 1. I have found one of my answers already, but it says 2 values. So let's do the square root of 5 divided by 2. In my head, I might think that's really close to 1. This I know is 2 over 3. This is 20 over 9 or 10, because 3.14 times 3.14. I don't want to try to figure these out in my head. I want to prove it. I always want to prove it. So I will simply use my calculator. This one asks me to put the number in first and then the square root. That's 2.23, blah, 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 divided by 2. And that is not smaller than 1. It's just a little bit bigger than 1, so I don't like this answer at all. This one's the square root of 8 divided by 3, so I'll clear this. I'll hit the square root of 8, and I will divide it by 3. And there it is. It's less than 1. Now, I've always been a really good test taker. I have my 2 answers, but I want to just prove that it's not these ones. So I would do the math on both of these on the calculator as well, and prove that they are bigger than 1 and bigger than 1, and then I'll move on to the next question. If I find one that's less than 1, then I might think, okay, I might have made a mistake, and I'll double check these ones. But I found the 2 right answers, and I'm on to the next question. The square root of 79 is between which 2 whole numbers? Given the calculator, I can find no excuse not to get this right. I'm going to hit 79. I'm going to find out what the square root is. 8.888194, which is just somewhere really close to 9, but less than 9 and bigger than 8. Somewhere between, that is between 8 and 9. Certainly not between 7 and 8. It's not between 9 and 10. It's not between 10 and 11. It's between 8 and 9. Very, very doable. The square root of which number is located between 8 and 9? Same thing. I'll just find out what the square root of each of these numbers is. 18, square root is 4.2. That's not between 8 and 9. Square root of 36 is 6. The square root of 66 is 8.12. There it is. That's between 8 and 9. I found the right answer. Just simply using this magic tool, which we're always provided for on questions where it's required. They're not going to deny you a calculator on questions like this. Square root of which number is between 21 and 22? I'm going to guess. I'm going to guess that it's 231. Let's find out. 15 point, no, that's not big enough. How about 459? Let's make sure. Let's prove this. 21.4. Between 21 and 22. Nothing to it. Just a couple clicks on a calculator. The value of the irrational number below is located, that's the square root of a number that I don't know. If it was 400, I would know it is 20, but it's 193. I don't know the square root of that. That's why it's irrational. The value of the irrational number below is located between which 2 consecutive numbers? All I got to do is 193. Find out what the square root of that is. is 13 point blah 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 blah. 13.89 is between 13 and 14. Please don't tell me you think that's too hard for you. You can use a calculator, punch in these numbers, and get it right. If you're not real, what's the word I'm looking for? If you're not great with a calculator, then work on it. Let's work on it. This tells me to find the square root of 510 and decide where it falls. So I'll just put in 510, the square root. And some calculators might have you hit square root first and then the number and equals. You just make sure you know your calculator. And we'll practice the Galileo one and the AZ Merit one in Arizona. Wherever you live, make sure you know how to use the calculator they're providing. This comes out to 22.583, which is bigger than 22 but less than 23. And that's my answer. Certainly doesn't fall between 25 and 26. It does not fall between 50 and 51, etc. What is the closest to the value of the expression below? They want the square root of 15. 3.87. So it's one of these guys. And all you have to do is have a little bit of number sense. 3.87. Is 0.87 close to 0.9 or close to 0.5? I think most kids can tell that that's really close to 0.9 and a little ways away from 0.5. Would definitely be over A. Which inequality is correct. Now this is written in a way that kids are maybe unfamiliar with, and we got to make sure you see this quite a bit before we test you on it. But this tells me that 5 is bigger than the square root of 3. Then it says that the square root of 3 is bigger than the square root of 2. So it basically says exactly what you learned in 2nd, 3rd, and 4th grade probably. But there's 2 of them in there. And that's not a big deal. Just look at one at a time. So the 5 is bigger than the square root of 3. We all learned that the alligator wants the bigger number. So let's find out what the square root of 3 is. It's pretty obvious, I think, if you have the number sense that most of my students do. Where is my calculator? There it is. Okay. So the square root of 3, and I'll write that down if I have a scratch paper or something. I want to know what the square root of 3 is. That's 1.7. 5 is certainly bigger than 1.7. The square root of 2 is 1.4. And if it's even closer numbers, I might have to take it to the hundredth or the thousandth place, but 1.7 is bigger than 1.4, and I found my answer already. They repeat these numbers over and over, just jumble them all around, so let's look at this and make sure this is wrong. 1.4 is the square root of 2 is greater than 5. No, it's not. The square root of 3 is bigger than the square root of 2. That's pretty logical sounding, but again, we figured out that the square root of 2 is 1.4. And right here, it says that 1.4, or the square root of 2, is greater than 5. No, it's not. Now looking at it here, we got the square root of 5 is bigger than the square root of 2. I bet that sounds right to you. But it also says the square root of 2 is bigger than the square root of 3. That does not sound right to anyone. So we proved that this is the right answer. We disproved all of these. That is the best way to take a test, in my view. Let's do that again. The square root of 11, and then they turn the symbols around, so we have less than signs now. So the square root of 11 is less than the square root of 22. Boy, that sounds right. The square root of 22 is less than 11. That might sound right to you, but let's absolutely prove it with our calculator again. Square root of 11 is 4.7 or 4.69. Let's think about this one more time. The square root of 11 is 3.3. Is less than 4.7. Yes. 4.7 is less than 11. Yes. I like this answer. Let's double check down here. We've got the square root of 11, 3.3. 11 is less than 3.3. No, it's not. The square root of 11, we have 3.3, or 3 3/10 is less than 11. That's true. Is 11 less than the square root of 22? Is 11 less than 4.7? No, it is not. And let's make sure this one's wrong too. 4.7 is less than 3.3. I already know that's nonsense. 4.7 is not less than 3.3. Proved this the right answer, disproved all these as the wrong answers. Got a few more to go. New look here. We want to figure out which one of these dots on our number line is equal to the square root of 10. It reads, a part of the real number line is shown below. A number line with fractional answers in between whole numbers. Which letter represents the location of the square root of 10? Very simple. Grab your calculator, like all of these questions. Find out where it is. It says 3.16. Could that be here? No, that's between 2.5 and 3. That's no good. Between 3 and 3.5? Yeah, I sure like that. This one's between 3.5 and 4, so it would be bigger than 3.5. No way. This one's way too big. It's 4.8 or so. I don't like that. Very simple if you use the calculator. Guessing is not our friend. Same exact kind of question. So which letter represents the location of the square root of 18? Boom, grab your calculator. Square root of 18 is 4.2 something. The only one between 4 and 4.5 is right here. And we have our answer. You can look at the other ones and say, those are nowhere near this answer. Very, very doable. Same kind of thing. Let's do this one more time. The 60. The square root of 60 is 7.7. That looks like it's right about there. Close to 8, but way bigger than 7. Not between 8 and 9. Not between 5 and 6. Not between 4 and 5. Right there at 7.745967. So C is our answer. And when we do take big tests, we sure wish we had about 100 of these. We could really prove that we're good at math. Same thing, square root of 12, real quick. We'll do the same kind of question, 3.46. That isn't 3 point something. 3.46. Oh, right there, sure like that. This one's right at 3. This one's way over 4. It's got to be y. I can't find a good reason to get a question like that wrong. Just grab your calculator and prove it. The cubed root of 81. This calculator doesn't have a cubed root, but if they're going to ask you for cubed roots, they better be giving you a calculator where you can do a cubed root. The cubed root of 81 would be 4 point something, and you would find that on your calculator. Just do the exact same thing, but make sure you know how to find a cubed root. And our answer here would be C. Appreciate your attention as always. Please, when they give you a calculator and they ask you a question where you need to use a calculator, just do so. Thank you very much for your attention. Have a great day.